Hey everybody, Charlie here. Welcome back to Conquering Kerbal Space Program. This is episode 100, and we have a really cool, very special mission to launch today. But before we get into the mission, I had to get rid of one of our administrative goals. I have gotten rid of Probe Frenzy 3. We had this active, but I got rid of it because it changes the cost to launch crewed vessels. And it increases it by 100%, which means the vessel we're going to launch today would actually cost us double. And it's expensive, and I don't want it to cost a lot of expensive. So I'm going to cancel that before we start. Now, I also need to do something else before we really get into it, but I'll just kind of do that, and then we'll get into the mission for today. So let's just zoom ahead to the part where I'm kind of doing what I need to do first. All right, finally, now that that's taken care of, back to the Space Center, and now you're going to see why I wanted to remove that administrative thing, the Probe Frenzy thing, because it's going to make manned missions more expensive. That's what I said. So let's check out what we're doing today. All right, Space Plane hangar time, and I'm finally able to present to you the mission that we're actually going to do for this episode. This is the PII Broadsword Mark II. I've actually changed a little bit about the plane to make it work for this particular mission, But in doing so, I've also enabled it to go so many more places, and I'll walk you through that. If you guys were at the live streams for the behind-the-scenes stuff that we were planning before, you guys already know what the mission is and what I'm trying to do. However, you might notice that the plane, what we're using, is a bit different, and that's because during the live streams I was using the Scimitar, and the Scimitar, if you recall from a long time ago, when we moved to the new version of KSP and Ferrum Aerospace Research no longer became a thing we had installed, the Scimitar needed to be replaced because the wing parts, the B9 wing parts, they just don't work without Ferrum Aerospace Research. They slow everything down, they mess everything up. So I've been using the Broadsword as a replacement for that, and the Broadsword Mark I was pretty useful in taking a whole bunch of things to the station. Well, the Broadsword Mark II is useful for going way interplanetary. The Mark II has incredibly increased range. And let me walk you through why. Okay, so first things first, let's take a look in the cargo bay. Actually, that's not the first thing. The first thing is showing you what the mission is, of course. The mission today is the satellite network around Urlum, if I can get to it here. Yeah, it's already right in front of my face. This whole thing is lit up that way. It says there's so much science to be done in Urlum system. We need to set up communications network that can cover every moon in the system. So this contract is gonna get us $750,000 to complete it. And it's a satellite network around Polta, Preax, Wall, and I'm gonna actually do Urlum as well while we're out there. So 4 bodies to put a satellite network around. It's only gonna get us $750,000, and you'll notice that the cost of launching this is, $1.5 million. And if I hadn't have gotten rid of that administrative thing, it would have cost $3 million to launch this thing. So, yeah, probably a good idea to cancel that thing before we launch this plane. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, if you're not familiar with this, Urlum is a planet added by the Outer Planets mod, and it's farther away than Sarnus. I learned a lot from our Sarnus mission. Let me just go ahead and open up the cargo bay here. I want to show you a couple of things. I don't want to show you everything, but I want to show you a couple of things. I learned a lot from our mission to Sarnus that I did on our live stream series before. And one of the things that really got me and I really learned is that solar panels will absolutely not be working at all. You might as well not even bring them because they do absolutely nothing when you're that far away from the sun. So all of these satellites here are going to be powered by radioisotopic thermoelectric generators, basically. So the radioisotope thermoelectric generator, aka the RTG, which is what I'm going to call them from now on, these RTGs, they have a little bit of power generation, not much, as well as all of these satellites are also going to pack the Sheba engine, which has a built-in alternator that does 0.5 electric charge per second. Those two things combined are enough power to power the Communitron 32 as well as the HG5 high gain antenna. Now, the high gain, the HG5 has a very similar look to the DTS-1. If I go to communications right here, the DTS-M1, has a very similar look to this because of Venstock revamp. But this satellite here takes too much power. It takes 0.82 per second. It has a 50 million meter range, Jesus, and a 45-degree cone. So it has a fairly wide cone and a pretty decent range, but I don't need that kind of range, at least not around the Urlum system. I don't need that kind of range. Instead, we're gonna use the HG5 because even though it has less range, has less than half the range, it also has a wider cone, and the most important thing is it uses 0.55 electric charge instead of 0.82. And that slight discount on the electric charge, that slight bit of efficiency there, is what I needed in order to get this thing under power. So now we are going to be set. All of these things should stay powered forever without needing any solar power, which is great. So this satellite here is going to communicate with Kerbal. This is the Reflectron GX128. It has an 800 gigameter range, fantastic range, but at the expense of having a ton of power requirements, 5.6 to be exact per second. Very narrow cone as well, so it's going to be relatively ineffective until we get way out there, which is fine because this thing's not coming out of the cargo bay until we are already in Urlum's sphere of influence, if you will. So that's fine. Now this thing needs a lot more juice. So in addition to this thing needing more juice, we also have 3 of the HG5s on this as well, because this is my relay around Urlum. It's going into a polar orbit around Urlum, and this thing's going to communicate with each of the moons. So this one goes to one moon, the other moon, and the other moon. So all of these things, all of these little probes are going to be communicating with each other with the Communitron 32s, and they'll be communicating with this using the HG5. And so this has an HG5 for each body. So pretty good plan there. I think that's going to work out really well. Of course, this also has a Shiba engine as well. It's more expensive to use the Shibas by like a large margin, but the extra alternator power is kind of a requirement here, so I'm using it. There are 10 RTGs here, if you're wondering how many I'm using on that. It's kind of hard to make mass RTG look good, but I think I've done an okay job there. Then, underneath the relay satellite, we've got this science satellite, and this satellite has all of the reusable experiments, as well as these micro goo containment pods. And the micro goo is way more expensive, but each one of these has 2 goo experiments in them. So there's a total of 16 experiments that we can do, which is nice. It's actually kind of more than we need, but I'm just gonna bring it because of redundancy and saying whatever, we'll do it. It's fine. Then we have the Science Junior. Now, you guys know about Science Junior. You guys know about this. It is only able to be used once, and then you have to reset it with a scientist and use it again if you want to. And we're gonna be using this more than once. And we're gonna be using it more than once because this is a manned mission to Urlum. We are going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff with Kerbals on this mission. Let's check out who is the brave souls going to Urlum. The brave souls going to Urlum are Colin, Graham D. Kerman, Matthias Kerman, Dan Kerman, Logan Kerman, and Sean S. Kerman. Now, who are most of these guys? Graham D. has been in the series for a while. He just hasn't been used very much because he's a scout. Hasn't really been a need for a scout, but this is definitely a mission suitable for a scout. The rest of these guys are new names. I put new names into the game before, and I thought, you know what? Let's send the rookies. Let's let them explore the galaxy. So we have we've sort of recruited new people for this missions particularly. They've been specially trained. They've been in the simulator a long time. They have been doing all sorts of stuff to getting prepared for the longest journey Kerbal kind has ever undertaken. So let's go through this really quick. Colin is a pilot, need that for SAS and all that stuff. We have 3 scouts, and the cool thing about scouts is that they don't get homesick, so we don't have to worry about them turning into tourists based on habitation. They will, however, still need electric charge, and they will still need supplies. So you have to keep those things up as well. Then we have Logan Kerman, aka Crazy Man, and he is our scientist, which is going to be great because we also have an administrative contract or administrative goal that gives us additional science when we have a scientist nearby, as well as additional funds for the science that we collect around new biomes. Fantastic, lots of money coming in, and that is how I'm going to try and offset the cost of this mission, and how I'm going to try to ultimately make this mission worth it. Is not only are we bringing the plane back to Kerbin, which is the whole goal, it's going to be like a 30-year voyage, but that's the whole goal. Not only are we bringing the plane back to recover the cost of that, but I'm also bringing back a whole bunch of science and transmitting science, which is going to pay us money. That's how I'm going to offset the cost of this. The final person we have, or the final Kerbal we have, is Sean S. Kerman. And the engineer is going to be really helpful because the engineer is going to allow me to break down components once they are no longer useful, to shed the weight, shed the mass. Things like empty fuel tanks, which I'm going to open up this cargo bay all the way and then show you guys what we're dealing with here. Things like empty fuel tanks, once they're emptied, we can get rid of them. We don't need the mass on our plane anymore. We can shed certain things if it looks like we're going to be too heavy. If it just looks like we're not going to be able to get back into Kerbin for some reason, we might be able to shed the wings, for example, and these side tanks if they're empty. All sorts of things we can shed if we need to. One of the first things I'm going to shed once we're on our way to Urlum and we no longer have any oxidizer in the plane. One of the things I'm going to shed are these 2 engines. I'm actually going to break these 2 engines down and save the weight, and sort of, help us out there with that. And then, I might end up actually, once we're on our way to Kerbin, once we're on our way back later on, I might actually take apart 4 of these nuclear engines and just go with 2 engines only at that point too, just to get as much. I need to go as lean as possible for this stuff, right? So anyway, how are we going to do this mission, right? You guys are probably wondering, okay, so he has Kerbals going to Urlum, but we have life support. We've been talking about this all series. Like, why is life support is the big thing that's really something to consider all the time. And for this mission with 6 crew, we have 138 days of supplies and only 280 days of habitation. 138 days is all they can go with the amount of supplies that's here. Now, the trip to Urlum will take 12 years and 82 days to get there. That's the estimate with this. And it might take a little less than this. It might take a little more than that. It really depends on how we burn and how we, proceed towards it. It might give or take a couple of months. I have no idea, but it's gonna be a lot longer to get there than 138 days. So how are we going to survive this? How am I gonna prevent them from turning into tourists? Well, I've had this mod installed for the entire series, and I've never had a need to use it yet. But I'm gonna have a need to use it today, because today we are going to be freezing Kerbals. Yes, cryogenically freezing our Kerbals for the long journey to Urlum. Now that is gonna be done by the CRY 2300 cryonic freezing chamber. This chamber can hold 10 Kerbals as max. I'm only bringing 6, and there's a reason I've chosen 6, and I'll get into that in just a second. But the freezing is done by using 3,000 electric charge. That's a one-time cost. It's not a perpetuating thing. One-time cost to freeze 1 Kerbal. In addition to the electric charge requirement, it also requires 5 of this resource called glycerol. So this container has 25 glycerol. This cryonic freezing chamber contains 50, so there's 75 in here. I had to add this additional one because it costs 5 to freeze per Kerbal, so that would mean 30 is required to freeze every Kerbal. But I'm also gonna freeze them on the way back, which means I need 30 times 2, that's 60, so 75 gives us a little bit of cushion, which is nice. So that's our plan for getting them there. We're gonna freeze them on the way, so they're not using any resources at all. The supplies will stay the same. Their habitation timer gets frozen too. Then we'll wake them up when they're in Urlum's sphere of influence. They'll do their mission, and then they'll come back while frozen as well, and then we'll wake them up again once they get in range of Kerbin. Pretty cool, I think. I think it's gonna be great. But how is that gonna work, right? So why are we bringing 6, first off? If you want a manned mission to Kerbal, really all I needed, a manned mission to Urlum is what I mean. Really all I would need for that is a pilot, a scientist, and an engineer. That's probably the only thing I would really need to bring. Just a one of everything so that I know that I'm gonna be successful with it, or at least I can, if I accidentally launch one of these probes without extending the antenna first, how do I save that probe? Well, I need to get an engineer out there to do it, right? So all that stuff, right? That's the kind of stuff that we're dealing with. So why am I bringing 6? Well, around Urlum, and really around Duna as well, Duna had a 45 to 50 second delay between the time I sent a command and the time the probes actually did that command, because signal delay is a real thing with remote tech. When we did our Sarnus mission, the delay was like, 8 minutes or something like that? It was really long. And now that's not a big deal because I do have time acceleration and I can accelerate time to do that. But when the delay gets to be that long, what ends up happening is, in order to set up the satellite network, it's gonna take me months of in-game time to get that set up. And months are gonna go by, and there might be other missions I wanna do in those months. And I really don't want to keep going back and forth between these two things, trying to do all these different missions and juggling them around. So instead, what I'm doing is I'm bringing 6 Kerbals plus this. This is the RC-LO1 Remote Guidance Unit. And by having this, as well as 6 Kerbals on board, it turns your vessel into a command center. What that means is that the signal delay is going to be calculated not based on the distance between this probe and Kerbin, but instead the distance between this probe and this vessel, which will also be in the same sphere of influence, so the delay will basically be non-existent. So in other words, we are bringing a mobile command center with us that can power and drive these probes and direct these probes locally, as opposed to having the directions come from Kerbin. So that's why we're bringing Kerbals. The problem I do have with this plane now, though, is weight. And the thrust to weight ratio on this plane, the Mark III, the Mark II, going to Urlum is a 0.79, which is pretty good for a space plane. That's okay. But the previous broadsword had over 1.0. So it was able to, if it wanted to, just go basically straight up and accelerate if it wanted to where this one, you have to fly it a little bit smarter. In addition to that, I'm also bringing a ton of fuel tanks because I don't have enough fuel in this to actually successfully do the mission. So I'm bringing a ton of fuel tanks, but the fuel tanks I'm bringing are largely empty. There is a little bit of fuel in some of them, but they're largely empty. And the reason for that being that I don't have the weight. The weight is the entire problem. But once we get into space, it's not a big deal. The weight is not that big of an issue once we get into space. It's mostly just trying to fly the plane and getting it out of the atmosphere that I have to manage the weight with. So I'm bringing empty fuel tanks basically, and I have enough fuel to get to the station. That's the only thing that's important, is I need to get to the PISS, dock with that, refuel this thing entirely, which is why I needed to bring the fuel tanks at the start of this episode. And then I'll have enough fuel on the station to fully fuel this thing back up so that it can go along its way. So that is the introduction to the mission. That's the introduction to the craft we're using. Now it's time to actually fly this sucker. Let's get it up in the air and go to Urlum. All right, out on the runway. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this because we're not doing a tourism mission. Let's go ahead and hit the brakes. And we'll turn on the lights too, why not? I am gonna have to fly at night. Sorry, just the way it is. I don't have time to wait till the daytime. So here we go. I'm gonna open up this cargo bay really quick. Now I changed a couple of things, and I wanna show you what I changed before we get started here. I moved this, and that kind of helped with the torque that was being applied. Things are not being balanced necessarily in the cargo bay. So I moved that. I also changed the location of this dish from being here to being here now. But mainly I moved this. This is the space telescope. And I put it on the runway, and I was trying to test out to see where it was actually gonna point, because you can't test that in the VAB or in the spaceplane hangar. And it turns out it was pointed basically directly at this cockpit, and I didn't want that. So I've got it kind of angled out here like this now, and when it opens, it should now open to where it's facing out this direction, over top of the cargo bay. So basically none of the cargo bay will be in the picture, and we can actually take some clean pictures now with it, which is gonna be fine, which is gonna be great. Let's go ahead and close the camera. First thing I'm gonna do on the runway already, man, is we're gonna start freezing Kerbals. I don't want them to use any supplies. I want to use as little as possible here. So let's just pick somebody and freeze them. You'll see this will take 3,000 electric charge. Look at the resources here. Takes a little bit, but even though it's nighttime, we've got all these RTGs on all these satellites, which are not really doing anything. And all these RTGs are powering the vessel, so we're actually gaining charge pretty quickly because of all the RTGs, which is nice. On the way back, you might be wondering, well, you're not gonna have all these dishes on the way back, so how are you gonna power the plane then? And that's true. I've waited out with Ampere to try to see what it would take, and basically I've got some RTGs stacked inside here as well. I believe there's 8 of them, maybe 10. I think there's maybe 10 of them. I think it's 8. I don't know. Either way, there's enough to keep the thing working and powered all the way through the trip home as well. So that's good. Okay, let's free somebody else now. We'll go with Graham. Once again, 3,000 electric charge, as well as the glycerol. Whoa! Whoa! Look at this! Look at this down here. He's freezing. Whoa! Hold on. Okay, now I knew about the freezing. I didn't know that we would see it. That's cool. Hold on, let's do Dan. Dan's getting frozen. Look at this. It's popping glass. That is awesome. That's really cool. We're gonna do Logan. Oh, does it have an IVA? If I do... Oh, it does. It does. Ha ha ha. Look at this, you store 10 of them in here. That's pretty awesome. That's cool attention to detail right there. The fact that there's an IVA view for that too, that's really cool. Modders, man, they just impress me all the time. Okay, so I'm gonna leave Colin because he's the pilot. I'm also gonna leave Sean because I might need an engineer to break things down in the middle of the flight, but then these two are gonna get frozen on the way to Urlum, so I might also need them for things that are around the station and stuff too, possibly, so. Let's go ahead and close our cargo bays. We're gonna turn the SAS on, throttle it all the way up to max. You guys ready to rock? Let's do it. Urlum, here we come. Right, that's the ascent. We'll end up with an apoapsis that's like around maybe 87K, 85K, something like that. So, but we got lots and lots of fuel left. This is deceptively dishonest right here. This is basically like, oh, you don't have any oxidizer left, so you can't go anywhere. But like, I've got a whole bunch of liquid fuel left. There's these tanks up here that aren't even touched yet. So that's kind of how I do it. I try to make sure that the center of mass always moves forward during flight instead of backwards. And so I disable access to the top two tanks. And that allows me to like sort of make sure that all the fuel is being taken out of right here. And by taking and making this part lighter, of course, that moves the center of mass forward. So, okay. So now it's just a matter of rendezvousing with the station. I timed it already to where I should rendezvous with it somewhere over there. So we should be close. Maximum, I would think, like 1 hour, maybe an hour and a half to get to it, hopefully. I'm not gonna make you guys wait through all that. You guys have seen this all before, so. All right, we're finally sort of near the station-ish, and you can see the frame rates that this vessel, which is 299 parts, you can see the frame rates we have with this vessel next to the station. Those frame rates don't improve much once we dock to the station. They won't improve much from there, but I have got a new processor and motherboard that I bought recently. That's essentially funded by you guys. I really appreciate it. And I'm gonna install that into my PC and sort of really revamp everything. And I'm hoping that by installing this new CPU, which is the 8700K, and overclocking it to 5 gigahertz, I'm hoping that we see a dramatic increase in frame rates because of that. So I'll keep you guys posted on that, and in future videos, once I've installed that, we'll see the difference at that point, because I'm pretty sure this is not the end. This is not the last time we're gonna see the broadsword near the station. So we can use this as sort of a reference. Telling you what, guys, this mod is so good. If you play KSP and you don't have docking alignment indicator, I don't know why it's so good. Like when I first started out using this, like when this series first started, I wasn't using this mod, and you know, I had my complications with docking, but yeah, for the most part I knew how to do it. Then I got this mod, and it took me a couple of videos, right, to figure out sort of how it works, kind of get a feel for the controls for it, and get used to looking at this indicator as opposed to looking at the nav ball and stuff. And oh god, like now that I've got it, and now that I know how to work with this thing, it makes everything with docking so much easier. To be able to see like your orientation of your craft relative to the docking port is just a godsend. So if you don't have this, like you really should get it. Just saying. The plane needs to be precise. This plane is so massive. I mean, look at the size of the plane compared to the station. Like it's pretty big, all right? It's a really big plane. And it's gonna dock with this very tiny docking port, remember? So it's you gotta be precise with it. And this docking alignment indicator mod is like, I just can't imagine trying to do this anymore without it. Like this, especially this big of craft. I just can't imagine trying to do this without it. It's so good. It's just so good. All right, let's slow this thing down. Let's kind of use the monopropellant here, kind of slow our velocity down a bit here. Get ourselves going, closer speeds. I don't want to hit the station, obviously, because of the size of my vessel. I will rock this station, and it will send it tumbling, if you will. So I really need to be very, very gentle when I dock with this plane. Very precise and very gentle, which with this mod, I totally can. All right, we might actually make our launch window here, which is really surprising to me. I just timed it right, you know? I'm getting better at this. As you go, you get better at things, and I'm getting better at it. I only had to revolve around Kerbin once to get within, like, rendezvous range, if you will. 48 minutes to transfer all this fuel, which is, you know, not a lot, but it's more than I thought I'd have. It's about 15 minutes more than I thought I'd have, actually, so I think we're in pretty good shape. Let me just open up all these drive bays here, all these cargo bays here. And then it's time to move fuel around. We've got all this extra fuel that we put down here, right? And so we're gonna use some of that fuel. And I think the first thing I'm gonna do is probably just fill up all the cargo bay units. So this one's already full because I never accessed it. So it's this one. Come on, frame rates. There we go. This one. Come on now. There we go. This one. Come on now. Like it takes several clicks to sometimes get these windows to open. I think we'll do these outside tanks too. Unless these are liquid fuel oxidizer, and I need to do those separately. So grab this tank here, yep, and we'll just go out. And we'll just do this, and you see how long it's gonna take. It's gonna take a while. I'll see you guys when I'm all transferred. All right, the final tanks are being filled with liquid fuel, and man, there's a lot of fuel in this plane. We're taking a lot of fuel. Most of these tanks you see were empty, right, when we came up here, because the weight of trying to like get them through the atmosphere of Kerbin. But now that we're out of the atmosphere, all of the tanks are full, and what that results in is basically all of the fuel being used out of this tank and most of the oxidizer. Let's take this out of physics time warp here. All of the fuel being used out of this tank and some of the oxidizer, and then all of the fuel, most of the fuel actually being used out of this tank and a decent amount of oxidizer. Hey guys, I'm gonna go ahead and talk over myself really quick here because I kind of ramble on quite a bit in this episode and this is getting long already. So basically, got all the fuel in the plane. You guys are good with that, awesome. I'm also gonna take the monopropellant that's in the plane and transfer it into the station because I don't need a whole bunch of monopropellant and I might as well lower my mass while I'm at it, so I'm gonna do that. Come to find out later, I would actually find 2 additional little tanks of monopropellant in the plane. Didn't know I packed 4 tanks, I thought I only had the 2. Doesn't matter, won't have that big of an impact on the mission. Anyway, so this time we're gonna burn once around the planet, which is what we just did. That gets us sort of on our way and started towards Urlum. Then I'm gonna get my final maneuver set and get myself a rendezvous, which is fairly close. We're gonna correct it on the way to Urlum anyway, so it doesn't need to be super precise right here, but I do wanna get it pretty close. Then on our way around Kerbin, on the first pass, as we're getting ready to like sort of prepare for this burn, Sean is gonna get out and he's gonna start breaking down all of the tanks that are currently empty after I shift fuel around to make as many tanks as possible be empty. That pretty much includes every single liquid fuel oxidizer tank, aside from the ones that are sort of the wings are attached to. But aside from those, every other tank is going to be empty, so every other liquid fuel oxidizer tank is going to be removed. And of course, just like I said in the space plane hangar, the last two things he's going to dismantle are these two broadsword engines. We do not need 4 of them anymore. The primary purpose of having 4 is just to get us out of the atmosphere easier. But now that we're in space, we don't need this extra weight. We can shed it. And the vast majority of the trip, they're not even going to be useful anyway. And once he's done breaking down everything, Sean is going to get back into the cryo chamber to be frozen. I just love this. This is so cool that they thought of doing that down there. I don't know what the big black bar is over top of his head. He's the only Kerbal that had it, but regardless of what that is, I just think it's really cool. Okay, we can close up the cargo bays now. There's no reason to have them open, I don't think. Let me double check. There is actually a reason to have them open, and that is this. We want this communitron to be open. We want it set to target, and what we're looking for with this dish on the top, this is an HD55. Extended range on this, 25 gigameters. What we want to do with this is point it at the interplanetary relay that's going around Kerbin, because we're going to want extended range and communication with this thing. So we're going to find this IP relay 1. That will be what we pointed at, and we'll go ahead and activate now so we don't forget. Okay, so this dish has 25 gigameter range, and it'll be in range of Kerbin for quite some time, so we're going to continuously have communication with this thing, which is good. What I'm thinking of doing, or thinking I need to do, is I need to start burning probably around here. It's about trying to match it to where this ends up in the middle of our maneuver, but since my engines have 2 different amounts of force, it's not as extreme as it was going to be with 4 engines, but it's still there. So I'm thinking I start maybe, what does it say our maneuver is right now? It says it's a 5-minute burn. I think this is fine. Okay, let's go ahead and time accelerate. First thing I'm gonna do though is quick save, because I don't want any shenanigans from KSP to interfere with this. Okay, let's go like this, all the way around. Don't miss it. Hang on. Do not overshoot this, or we're in deep, deep shit. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm not gonna do any more time accelerations. I'm thinking I really want to get. Okay, we're gonna go like 5 times speed. 5 times is. I think we can handle 5 times. So we're currently 5 minutes from the maneuver, and if I start burning now, I think it's too early. I think I'll end up basically going right into Kerbin, which, using a little bit of Oberth effect wouldn't be that bad. Obviously, the Oberth is great. Oberth is life. It's actually not that bad, because this is the horizon right here. You can barely see it in the dark. But I'm thinking, right about maybe just a tad bit longer. Also, we're not pointing at the node. I need to point right at the node, please. Right on the node at all times, please. And I'm gonna leave RCS on. We have a full cockpit. Whoops. Oh well, it's fine. I think we start burning now. If nothing else, our periapsis will just get pushed a little bit, but it shouldn't go into the atmosphere at this rate. We're not far enough. We're close enough to our maneuver where our periapsis is not going to drop into the atmosphere. So I think just a little bit more. I really don't want to go in the atmosphere. And I think right about here ought to do it. I really don't want to go too early. I'm so paranoid about going too early. Okay, I'm going to commit to this. Whew. All right. Make sure we're on the maneuver. We totally are. Double check that. Yeah, we totally are. Okay. Whew. 3, 2, 1, go. And we're going to use oxidizer really fast. So we're going to use basically the oxidizer is going to be gone well before this burn is done, and we're going to be left with basically just the nuclear engines. And then it's going to take significantly longer to do the burn, with the nuclear engines being the only thing. So that's why we're doing it this way, well before the burn. That's why we're not going based on this. It's because I know I'm going to lose these engines are way more powerful than all 6 of these combined, but I'm going to lose these. So that's why I'm doing it really, really early, if that makes any sense to people. We are leaving Kerbin. Are we nervous? Anybody nervous about this at all? Okay, nearly half of the maneuver is done, or nearly half, but we're not even halfway here yet. But the thing is, we're running out of oxidizer right now. So let's see how long the burn goes. It goes from 3 minutes and 33 seconds to 17 freaking minutes. Oh my God. Oh, Jesus. Now we know. Now you know why I got a head start on that. Oh God. I don't think I actually started. I think I started too late even. I might have needed to start earlier, but it is what it is. Okay, well, 17 minutes is what's remaining in this burn. All right, I'm not gonna make you guys watch this whole burn. I'll see you guys when it's done. All right, we're moving up. Getting close to there. Now, this thing is telling me that I've got another like 5 minutes to burn, but like looking at this, I feel like that's a lie. I feel like there's not actually 5 more minutes to burn. That seems a little bit weird to me. In fact, it says I have an encounter right now, so I'm gonna stop right there. Whew, hang on a second. Wow, yeah. We got an encounter right now, ladies and gentlemen. Not here, but here. A little bit later than what it was predicted, but if I take a look at this, it's actually not that far off from what we had already. So I'm gonna go ahead and solidify that and say that that is what we have. So this is our encounter. It's gonna happen in just over 12 years. Pretty much what Kerbal Alarm Clock said it would be. 12 years, 82 days. This one is 12 years, 94 days. Pretty close, yeah. I think within 2 weeks is, within 2 weeks for an interstellar travel is quite accurate, if I do say so myself. We can get this to be a little bit more accurate probably, but I'm gonna do that remote. So, say bye-bye to Kerbin. We're traveling 3,700 plus meters per second orbital velocity now. And you might be seeing this 3,075 meters per second as our delta V remaining, but that's actually not accurate because this whole time I've had this forbidden. I still had the front tank completely forbidden. If I activate that, we end up with 3,500 meters per second. So an additional 500 meters per second that we didn't know we had. I totally forgot about it. I transferred a little bit of fuel during this burn, so I took all the fuel out of here while it was burning and transferred it to the middle section. I'll probably do that with all these other little tanks and stuff too, but pretty much right now, it's just an interstellar travel. We're just gonna sit and wait for a bit. So I'm gonna extend these solar panels just because there's no downside to doing it, so we're gonna do that. This is facing the sun right now. That's great. Let's double check and make sure everything is good in here. I just want to open up a couple of bays, actually. I don't need all of them open. And so this is pointing to Kerbin. It is on. It is good to go. So we should maintain a connection to this for some time. Let's go ahead and transfer our pilot into here. Do we want to do that right now? You know, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait just a little bit longer because I'd rather make sure we get these in. So what I need to do now before we travel, right, is I need to get our maneuvers set to get ourselves like right where we need to be. Then I also need to program the wake up signal. That's a really important part because our guys are going to need a signal in order to wake them up. And so a lot of you guys who use deep freeze probably know this already and have been cringing going, oh no, he's gonna kill people, he doesn't know this. I do, I know this, okay, it's fine. Is this it? 1 hour, fine, good. All right, so let's go ahead and adjust this a little bit more. We're gonna go all the way out to Urlum. Let's focus our view there. Change the sensitivity on this to be all the way down. Now what we want to do is adjust this and do a very small maneuver that's going to get us to be like basically right on top of Urlum, pretty much is what I want. So if I go up from here. Okay, right about there. Then retrograde some more. Okay, now we're gonna get an encounter here. Now this is actually nice, because I did want to get in range of one of the moons, and this is Wall. So this is actually really good that we're gonna come right through Wall here. If I can get this maneuver to get us really close to Wall, that would be great. So if I can get us to go just a little bit down, just a little bit right in there. Yes, just like that. That's beautiful. Our wall periapsis is 540 meters per second, or 540 meters, 1,000 meters. I would like it even closer than that. I want to get like, whoops, like right in there. Let me just go a little bit the right. Oh, no, it's so touchy. I'm not going to be able to get it that precise anyway, but this is why I want to do this. Because if I get this around Wall can influence our trajectory to kick us in another direction. It also slows us down a bit. But if I come in on the right side of Wall, which is what I'm doing, we end up getting even closer to Urlum. We can kick ourselves like angled closer to Urlum. And look at this curve. It's already somewhat curving. So if we can get this thing to kick us around Wall and then get us into Urlum even closer, like we could shave off quite a bit of delta V on my aero brake here. Plus, I need a satellite in polar orbit. So getting something like that might be kind of good. We're gonna have to use some RCS here on this, but we're not gonna have control unless I want to have one Kerbal use 17 days of supplies. But I can't afford that because I have to do a remote signal to get these guys unfrozen. So I'm gonna have to make do with some things here. We can always do micro adjustments to get ourselves even closer once we're in range. So this might not be half bad for now. Back up. Oh, so touchy. Okay, here go. Like that, 171, I'm gonna take that. Now, Wall is a moon of Urlum, but it also has Tal. So there's a sub-moon here, right? There's a moon of a moon here as well. And I wanna like get through all this. So this is kind of one of the reasons why I wanted my plane around Wall. I wanna get my plane sort of orbiting Wall and then send the satellites out to go wherever they wanna go around Urlum. That's kind of what I wanted to do. I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but that's kind of what I wanna do, so. Okay then, well, that's a pretty cool maneuver. I think we're gonna plan on doing that, and it is in 17 days from now. And it's 126 meters per second. So I think we could probably rely on the flight computer to do that for us. If we can, again, we can adjust it once we get closer to it. We can make micro adjustments at that point. We have the fuel to do that. So what I'm gonna do is let's turn off the RCS. We don't want it to use any of that to rotate because it might influence our path there. Let's make sure we're pointing towards the node. And actually, I'm gonna shut smartass off because we don't want smartass doing anything. We want the flight computer to do everything. So let's have the flight computer do the next maneuver for us. But before we do that, let's take and transfer Colin into the freeze chamber. Yeah, it worked that time, cool. And then we're gonna freeze Colin. Here we go. And it's gonna give us a warning that says, this is our last Kerbal, are you sure? It's an active connection is gonna be required to initiate the process of thawing. And I'm gonna say yes, so freeze him. So, in order to thaw all the Kerbals, right, in order to thaw them, we're going to need a connection. Now, we're not gonna have a connection because we're gonna be so far away and there's no satellites out that way to communicate with Kerbals. So what we have to do is give the flight computer the signal to thaw them before we lose connection. That's right now. So currently we have a connection to the KSC because of that little dish that's here, right? So what we want to do, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell this flight computer to execute this maneuver. That's going to have it do it. Then once it's done executing that maneuver, I now need to put a delay on this that's equal to whenever like we're gonna be near the area. Let's say within like 10 days of that. So if I go to get to Urlum, which is over here, if I can, hold on. Let's make sure we get this right, okay. So I'm gonna be around Wall in about, what's this? 12 years, 142 days. So I think in 12 years, 135 days, I'm gonna wake these guys up. So I'm just gonna put a big number in here and see kind of where that is. Let's see, 112600000. See how many seconds that is. Oh my gosh, that's actually quite close. 12 years, 100 days. Wow, that's, I swear to you, I did not plan that, but that's actually pretty close. It's 42 days away though. I need to increase it. So let's go 1, 2, let's maybe up the 6 to a 9. See what that does. 114 days. Okay, we're getting closer. Let's change the 9 to a 4 and then change the 2 to a 3. 138 days. That's pretty good. I think that's what I want. So this is the delay that's in here. It's anything I tell the craft to do right now is going to be delayed. Whoops, let's not change that. Here we go. Anything I tell the craft to do right now, it's going to do it, but it's going to do it with a 12-year, 138-day delay. Okay, that's the design. So I'm going to tell it to wake up Sean. Wake Sean up in 12 years, 138 days. Okay? And that gets put into the flight computer as being basically that many days away. So there you go. We are going to have a Kerbal awake in that time. And at that point, once that happens, all I have to do is move Colin to the cockpit, and then we'll have full control over all systems at that point, which is nice. Now, if I ever eject one of these probes, well, then we'll have no signal to the probe because we're not going to be a command center unless all Kerbals are awake. So I'll have to wake all of them up, but I'm not going to do that until we're in a stable orbit around the body we want to be in and we're ready to deploy the satellites. So that's what that's going to be. In fact, you know what I probably will do? No, I'm not going to, never mind. I was going to say I might be able to release a couple of these satellites and just let them sort of slow themselves down around wall and get themselves into orbit around wall, but they don't have enough delta V. These satellites all have enough delta V to sort of move themselves into position, but not to slow themselves into a capture. No. That's something that has to be taken care of by the plane. So there you go. That's it, guys. I'm gonna time accelerate just a little bit here. There we go. And then what I want to do with this is I need to thaw Logan and Colin. So actually, let's thaw Colin first. That'll happen a little bit after we thaw Sean. So engineer wakes up, checks all the systems, makes sure everything's good. Colin wakes up, cool, mission planning, getting our trajectories right, making sure we're good there. And then we'll wake Logan up after that. So let's just time accelerate a little bit, give it some time to wake him up. Okay, now we'll thaw Logan. And that's all we need thawed for now is those three. Because one's going to run experiments, make sure the science is good. Engineer's there to repair anything or to fiddle with this stuff if we need to, give us our trajectories, all that stuff. I'm just kind of role-playing that one. We don't really need the engineer awake until we're ready to deploy the satellites. And then we're going to have the pilot woken up to do our maneuvers and stuff. So, okay, that's it, guys. That's the mission. Isn't it exciting? And we'll see the results of this mission in the next... No, we're not. No way I could do this in the next episode. 12 years? No. The next episode, we're going to focus on getting to Eve in the next episode. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.